Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Cooking with Big Mark. We're going to do some more tips today.
Yes, the term with tips. These are sort of tried and true tips that I've learned over the years, one way or another. Of course, my basic mantra still is FIFO, flavor in, flavor out. That works at every level of cooking. But we'll talk about here. It's one of the first ones. When I have a cooking steaks, whether I'm pan frying or grilling, I usually will salt them 2 or 3 hours ahead of time. It sort of brings out the juices in them, and it's a little bit of a tenderizing process. And also, when you're marinating chicken or marinating any other kind of seafood, fish, or vegetables for that matter, when you go to cook them, you want to be sure you pat them dry. People sometimes don't do that. They leave the marinade on, and when it hits the pan or the grill, it doesn't. It boils, not broils. Instead of the moisture on it, water develops steam. So it doesn't. There's no sizzle to it. It's being steamed. So you always want to pat everything very dry before you do it.
So whatever it has gotten in there, that's it. It's over, patted dry, it's been moisturized.
Right, and all the flavor that have gotten out of that process is gone. So the other thing is the use of the new salad greens now you're buying. I talked last week about salad spinner being important, but nowadays, as I mentioned, you buy these in these plastic containers now, these mixed greens, spring greens, half spinach, half romaine lettuce, all these things that are pre-washed, so they're clean, and they're very handy. But depending on how long you keep them or how long you use them, I usually buy that large one that's about this size. And after I've used it once or twice, I will then take paper towel and fold it underneath the material and roll it up in the container, and then close it and use it. Even better way to do that is if you have a container, save the one that you used from the old time, and when you get the new one, use a couple of handfuls, and then take the old container, line it with paper towel, put the new container contents into it, close it, and you've got a thing. You'd be amazed, after 3 or 4 days, you open up again, that towel will be soaked. It's just amazing how much liquid comes out. So that's a big thing with the paper towel. Same thing with herbs like dill or any of these other ones. The minute you buy them, take them, roll them up with a piece of paper towel, and then some saran wrap, and they'll last for 2 or 3 weeks that way. It'll never last any other way. So those are 2 very important things for keeping foods done that way. Another thing is the handling of ginger. People are using more and more ginger now, whether it's in dishes. And one of the ways to do it is when you get it home, peel it right away. And you peel it by scraping the skin off with a teaspoon. Don't try and cut it off with a knife. Just scrape it with a teaspoon, wrap it in saran wrap, put it in the freezer. Then when you need it, take out a grater and just grate it any amount you want. It's fibrous, so it's not like an ice cube. It grates very easily, or you can slice off pieces for julienne, or for small little pieces to flavor whatever you're doing. Then put it back in the freezer, and you get the ultimate use of it. In the old days, I used to have ginger. I'd use part of it. Then about 2 weeks later, I'd go in the thing, it'd be all dried up and like a piece of wood. So that's a much better way to treat the ginger by using the freezer. Another thing we talked a little bit, touched on last week, was when you're cooking bacon now, save the fat. I don't know how we got off of that, but the flavors, seasoning, you got a built-in lubricant for whatever you're sauteing, and people should use more of it because it really enhances the flavor. I made cornbread this week, and I used some old bacon fat that I had, and when I put it in the hot pan, the batter, and bam, there it was. You can taste that bacon flavor. It was great. Then when you're using spices, grains, or any nuts or anything, you want to toast them a little bit before you incorporate them into your recipe. It releases the oils a little bit in the case of nuts, and the flavor comes out. So when you do use them, it's you're getting the full benefit of it. Another thing is pasta water. People tend to throw away, they cook the pasta and then drain it, and all the water goes down the sink. You want to save a cup or 2 cups of that to the side, so that when you again incorporate your pasta into whatever dish it is, if it gets too tight or you need something loosening up, you use the pasta water for it. It's also could be like a little thickening agent as well because of the flour, and the water's already been salted. So it's like, it's flavored. And also, if you're making a pasta and it's going to eventually end up in a sauce, whether it's a garlic and oil or tomato sauce, if the package says cook for 10 minutes, you should do it 8. And then take the last 2 minutes and cook it, fit the cooking off in the sauce. That way, the flavor again permeates it, and it becomes much more, much tastier. The other thing is, if those of you who buy cheese like Parmigiano, Reggiano, any other hard like aged Gouda, and you come down the rind, people will cut the cheese off and throw the rind away. Save them, put them in the freezer. The next time you make a soup or a sauce of some kind, just throw them in. And again, they'll soften up and enhance with whatever you're doing, flavor-wise, from the cheese. Another big thing, you see people making hamburgers or steaks to the grills and some fish dishes. They're up there with a spatula, pushing it down, always patting it. All you're doing is pushing the juices out, which is your flavor content. Don't do that. And just put it in, and don't keep flipping it. If you put it in the hot pan or grill, let it stay there until it cooks. When it gets a little bit of char on, it'll release itself from the grill or the pan. Then you can flip it over, finish it off, and your juices are contained. Many times you do the searing is to keep the juices in. Then you turn around and push it down, squeeze them out again.
And the juices are going to rise, and that lets you know that the other side is pretty good.
That's right.
Right.
That's right. The steak is something they'll puddle, but you want to be careful because if it gets to that point, Mark, it's almost gone too far. If you get too much puddling on it. I mean, unless you like things medium well, or shoe leather style. That's what I call it. Once it gets beyond medium well, that's useless anyway.
Oh yeah.
Finally, talking about mushrooms, it's a new approach to those for many people have. They're not a breathing thing, but they're pretty close to it. They need air. And when you buy those little cello packs, with the cellophane wrapped all around, if you're going to use it for a day or two later, just open the cellophane and let them sit in your refrigerator open. If you're going to do longer, put them into a brown paper bag, and they will sit in the refrigerator. If you don't use them again for the next 2 weeks or 3 weeks, all they're going to do is dry out. However, you can reconstitute them like you would any other dry mushroom at that point and get the full flavor. Whereas if it stays wrapped up in that cellophane or saran wrap, it just rots. It gets slimy. I'm sure you've had it. At times I forgot a package was in there, and I was going to pull it out. It looks like it's crawling. So you want to be very careful of that. Then finally, you just talking about mushrooms, and also when you sauteing mushrooms, use oil, olive oil, or grapeseed, or vegetable oil as opposed to butter, because the butter burns. It get a high. Doesn't have a high burning content. It burns very quickly. Then you can put the butter in at the end when you're through. If you want the butter flavor, that's the way to do it. Years ago, many years ago now, I think I catered a lunch for the Mycological Society, which is mycology is the study of mushrooms, at the Waltham Field Station in Waltham, Mass. And Julia Childs happened to be the guest of honor on it, and the whole dinner was based around on mushrooms. I think the main course was a big portobello mushroom stuffed with some sort of a vegetable thing. I forget the other courses, but the dessert was, those days we used to buy ice cream in little squares, and I put the square on one side. We had some coconut pieces, which we tinted green to look like grass, shaved shredded coconut. The other side, we grated some dark chocolate on a grater, so it looked like dirt. And we had a little square with half of the green and half of the dirt, so it looked like a little garden edge. Then we made a little mushroom out of meringue, the stem with a little cap on it, held together with a pick, and put that in the dirt part of the garden. Then they had a little picture on the table of a clear creme de coco, and they watered their own garden, putting it, with the liqueur. So it was kind of unique. And Julia Childs came up to help after and said that was one of the more relevant desserts he had ever seen. So that was kind of fun. So those are the main stories, I think, as far as hints go. But those things have all worked. They're tried and true. And even now with hard-boiled eggs, I've tried boiling eggs. People now say, put the eggs in boiling water. The old thing was to put them in cold water. They come out now. They say put it in boiling water and let it sit. When it comes back to the boil, put the cover on, let it sit for 8 minutes, not 10. And supposedly the difference now is it makes them easier to peel.
Mm.
I haven't quite tried that yet. So anyway, that's it. Remember, FIFO, flavor in, flavor out.
Have you heard about the new meal prep trends?
They knew what?
The new meal prep trend where you can be ready to make pasta all week.
No.
What you do is you boil your water and then you put it in the freezer.
Oh, there you go. That sounds like a real cool deal.
All right, I couldn't help myself with that one. I'm getting ready to do a wedding next week as the guest mixologist. I kind of hate that term, but for lack of a better word, and wanted to do some seasonal stuff. So today, briefly, I'm going to talk about what I have planned. This was pretty excited about this. This is ramp salt. I dehydrated the leaves, about 5 or 6 leaves in the oven at about 200 for about 45 minutes. And it turns into just incredibly brittle. It dehydrates beautifully. And then
What kind of leaves?
Ramp leaves, Dad.
Oh, ramp.
Mm-hmm.
Garlic shoots.
Exactly. And so you take your salts and even the little stems are completely dehydrated. And you just pulse them together and you get this beautiful aromatic salt, and I'm going to use it to as a glass rim for my yeah, that smells unbelievable. Sort of like a truffle infusion, but a little bit different. It's very, very umami. It's going to be the rim, and then we're going to do a nice ramp bulb syrup. So you can see we have our little ramp bulbs are resting in a dark, I was going to say dark, quiet place, a dark, cool place. And they're infusing that sugar with flavor, and that will then be made into a syrup. And I'm also doing some ramp bitters. I may have a lead on fiddlehead ferns to pickle as a garnish for this, but remains to be seen, as the old joke goes.
Some people have those frozen, Mark.
Fiddleheads, really?
Yeah, I mean,
that's good to know.
at times, it's obviously seasonal, even with the big manufacturers, but some of the big stores used to have the frozen fiddleheads.
Interesting. So yeah, just trying to come up with some stuff that's seasonal. I mean, certainly there's a lot of seasonality in cocktail programs now here in Chicago, which I think is very exciting. So I wanted to kind of bring that into the home environment for this wedding I'm doing. So this has been Cooking with Big Mark. We do have a Facebook page now, so you can go ahead and like that if you are so inclined. We'll be posting content there as well as the show itself. And thank you, Dad. We will talk to you all soon.
Very good. Ramp it up.
Yeah, that's actually the name of the cocktail. You really
There
have
you go.
one mind on certain things.